And yes, so we can get to know each other more. Who would like to go next? Just say their name and the country that they come from.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pacific Irakoze. I'm from Burundi. I'm a junior doctor.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ayla Hamidovic. I'm from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm a final year medical student. Nice to meet you all.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Okay. Now I think we can continue. So thank you again, everyone, for being here, and welcome again. Before we start our session, we'll be telling you a little bit about our sub-team, as this is our first session. So our internal capacity building sub-team is one of the sub-teams under the education sub-team. Our aim is, as you might have guessed from the name, it's to build capacity of members. We plan to conduct different soft skill trainings and global surgery sessions once every 2 months. We have plans to communicate with each other, with each sub-team if they would like us to host a specific workshop related to their roles, and of course work on that. As a start, me and Irene are facilitating it by ourselves, but at the end of the session, we'll be sending out links for participants if anyone is interested to facilitate further sessions. In the long run, we also have plans to invite different speakers and trainers. Generally, we have great plans ahead and really energetic and motivated team members together. So together with all of you, we can take it to the next level. We'll be starting now. Irene, you can start over.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so for the people that entered after what we said, we just said that this session, as it was stated in the Google form, it will be recorded. And so it will include some getting to know each other. So if you haven't stated your name and the country that you come from, then you can, of course, say it now. I'm gonna give some time for this one. So is there anyone that didn't introduce themselves and they would like to do so?
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm from Japan, and I'm in the international team advocacy sub-team, and I'm the final year medical student. Nice to meet you all.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, I'm Julius. I'm from
also,
Malaysia.
Like
I'm a junior doctor.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Also, I would like to say a word. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Ahmed Reza. I'm the education team lead. And I'm so glad to have you all here in the first meeting and session of internal capacity building series. And I'm so excited to hear what Irene and Heben have prepared for us.
Thank you, Ahmed Reza. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves, their name and the country that they come from?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shanur, a final year medical student from Kenya, the head of the National Working Group in Kenya, which is InciSioN SF Kenya. Nice to meet you all.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so we can proceed now with what is going to be included in this specific session.
Hello.
Yes? Hello.
Hello, my name is Dr. Mohammed Abdullah Omar, InciSioN Somalia Year. I'm from Somalia. I'm excited to be here, inshallah.
Hello, thank you very much for your introduction.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so during this session, as Kevin already said, we are the sub-team in education team our main mission is internal capacity building. And we're going to see some things on communication, some basic things on communication, like what is communication, an introduction to the communication model, and then we're going to see some examples and tips for effective communication. Okay, so for the first part, what is communication? For this purpose, I'm gonna share a different tab of my screen right now. And as you can see, can you see my screen? Can I have a round of yeses, maybe?
We can.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so you can either with your phone or with your laptop or any device that you're currently using, you can go to www.menti.com, use this password, and then you'll enter this small quiz that we have prepared for you.
Just type the website name and the code.
You can give a thumbs up during the inside the website so that we know that you entered already. Perfect. So our question for you is, what do you believe that communication is? You can type down some keywords that you believe that apply to communication. You can type down a definition that you would give to the term communication. You can type down whatever you want. And we're going to give a couple of minutes for that one. Okay, so let's see some things that we have over here. So interacting with people, exchange of information between two or more persons, bridge to understand and collaborating with each other. We have another one that says when a person is able to transfer information to another and the receiver receives it and fully understands it. So we have understanding, we have the transmitting a message, but also understanding the message. We also have ability to convey a message to the text to the next person or a group of people in a manner that will leave them understanding exactly what it is that you want them to know and understand. So basically more or less like the previous one, transmitting a message, but also make sure that the receiver of the message understands it completely. Giving and receiving information, reporting, presenting, interaction. Transferring information from one source to another receiver. Okay. This is your last chance to submit any text if you would like to. Okay. So we're going back to our slides. And basically, this is everything that you said. So transmitting a message, having a sender and a receiver. A lot of you mentioned understanding the message. So if a message is transmitted to you or to another person, make sure that this person understands the message. Somebody mentioned that it's something between two people or more. And basically, all of these are things that are included in the various terms and definitions that are out there for communication. So if you search communication and the definition of communication, you'll find various articles and papers talking about it. And it can have a very scientific form, but also psychological or any other kind of form. So it's a topic that it has been very, very much discussed between scientists. It's a topic that people do not understand completely, so they tend to research more about it. So there's a lot of information about this one. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is the communication model. I'd just like to mention at this point that there are various communication models, but we're going to go through a very, very simple one that exists. And with this communication model, we'll try to see how communication works between people. And if we know how communication works, then we have the capacity to improve and enhance our communication skills, so we have more efficient interactions and efficient transmission of messages between us. So this specific model that I'm going to show you, it was firstly developed by some scientists after the invention of the telephone. So basically, after the invention of telephone, a lot of people started researching more about communication, and everyone was wondering how communication works and how they can explain how it works. So this one is some sort of explanation. But as I said, there are various models. This is just one of them, okay? So this is an open question, so for you to just open your mics and answer. How many types of communication do you think that there are out there? Any ideas? Types of communication?
Text.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Audio communication, text communication.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a message that is transmitted orally, a message that is transmitted by writing it.
Visually.
Yes?
There are many ways of the communication. The media communication, and the social communication, social media communication, and the only version communication that newspapers communication.
Okay, so there are many types of communication, like visual communication, oral communication. Somebody else that would also like to say something?
We could also classify it as verbal and non-verbal communication.
Yes, perfect. Actually, this specific, we also have some things in the group chat, visual, tactile, text. And yes, this specific model, so if you search it out online, you'll see that because it's a topic that it has been researched a lot, there are various ways and various categories that people, researchers have developed. This specific one, which is more simple one, it's divided to verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Okay, so this specific one, it describes communication as in this way. And it also gives a specific percentage that people use verbal and non-verbal communication. So out of 100%, how much do you think that verbal communication would take in our everyday living? I am repeating the question. So out of 100%, how much percent? So what is the percentage of verbal communication that we use every day in our lives? What's your guess?
Social media.
Sorry? Social media?
Television.
Maybe 70–80% of a daily communication.
70–80 of verbal communication, so which that makes 20 to 30% of nonverbal? Yes?
Yeah, I think that's what she means.
Okay. Okay, so basically, for when we are talking about this specific communication model, it's actually the opposite. So it says 30% for verbal communication and 70% of non-verbal communication that people use in their everyday lives. Okay, so somebody said before about social media and basically some verbal communication that people use every day, which is something that, of course, is a priority in our lives nowadays. But how would you describe verbal communication? Can I have maybe some examples on verbal communication and some examples on non-verbal communication? Anybody? Examples of verbal communication or non-verbal?
For verbal communication, we can have a phone call over the phone, talking to the person, or it could be a conversation, a face-to-face conversation. And for non-verbal, we could have texting, we could also have body language, and we could also even have like sign language.
Mm-hmm. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. So Jacqueline said it could be, as when it comes to verbal communication, is communication that is, it's used by verbs, so either oral or written communication, but then we have non-verbal communication that it can be used by gestures, expressions, and movements. If nobody else would like to add something specific on this one, I see a person here is unmuted. Maybe if they would like to share something.
So I was going to say.
Yes, of course.
Verbal communication, you can use your hand to in the verbal communication, face to face or via a phone call or a Zoom meeting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, so as we already explained some things here, at this point I have a question for you. So we said that verbal communication is defined by words and non-verbal is not, but how about the voice? The voice that we speak to each other. Is it verbal or non-verbal communication? Any ideas? Okay, so one person in the group chat says verbal. Other ideas? Or both? Mm-hmm. Interesting. So our voice, the voice that we use to talk to people, is it verbal or non-verbal communication?
I just can say that our voice has different parts, like the intonation that we use, the tone that we use, or if, for example, if we talk very slowly or fast, or quiet or shouting. I know that speaking has different parts, but for each part, I don't know which part is does belong to verbal communication or non-verbal. I rather to hear from other colleagues that each part, what do they think about each part?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much, Ahmed Reza. So basically, as you said, and some people also in the group chat said, this is something that, of course, yes, it can be both. Even though we use our voice to sometimes express verbal communication, it can be also non-verbal communication because the tone that we use our voice with, so if we use different tone or if we use specific words or specific expressions or specific ways that we are telling something orally, then this can be interpreted as non-verbal communication. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the, yes, somebody wanted to say something? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the communication model, but as soon as you have any questions, you just can use it in the chat room or unmute yourselves and say so. Okay, so coming up next, we have, as we already mentioned, the sender and the receiver. And as we also mentioned in the first part, in the first activity, where we tried to define communication, it's something that it can be done between two people or more. And between those people, we need a way to transfer the message that we have. So that would be the medium. So medium is a way that we have a message, we want to transfer it from the sender to the receiver, and we use this way to do so. There's a bit of a trick right here. So this sender has a message, but this message could not be transported into medium. Because as you see over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it's all messy and everything. So it cannot be transmitted through the medium because otherwise the receiver will not be able to get it. At this point, we have something that is called encryption. So we have this message and we encrypt it as we see in an envelope over here. So basically having the content of the message, and with encryption, we make it in a way that it can be transmitted through the medium, as we see over here. Okay, so the message has been sent, Now it's time for the receiver to receive this message, and it has to be again in the same way as it was be sent before. So the receiver opens the envelope and they get the message, but in order to be able to understand the message, they have to decrypt the message. So we have decryption. I'm just going to leave it like this, and I want to ask you again one more time another question. I know I ask a lot of questions, but yes, this is how the session is supposed to be. So if you don't feel comfortable in opening your microphones and talking, you can of course write it in the chat room, and I'm going to read it out loud. So my question is, what do you believe that is the difference between the message over here and encryption? And I would like to listen to your ideas on this one. Okay, so Julius, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, in the chat room says, looks like a software communication, how WhatsApp works. Can you please elaborate a bit more on that one? And everybody else, if they would like to say something, we're looking for the difference between the actual message and encryption. Is it the same thing? Is it not? How is it different from each other? Okay, so we have in the group shot that encryption is a way to scramble the message into a code, and the code is then sent through WhatsApp to be decrypted. Exactly. So if you imagine it, let's say by WhatsApp, so we have a message, but in order to send this message, we have to encrypt it somehow. So we have to use, let's say, our fingers and type down the message into a phone or a laptop, and this is what is called encryption. So I have the message in my mind, but in order to send it via WhatsApp, which in that case would be my medium, the way to send it, I have to encrypt it by typing the message down. So yes, thank you very much for your intervention over here. So basically this is the main difference between message and encryption. Okay, so do you believe that this model here is complete, or are we missing something? Is it okay like this? Is it missing something?
I think that communication is a bilateral transferring of information. It means a sender send information and receiver receive the information, and receiver should react or respond to the information that he or she or it got, has gave, and this picture is like a linear process, and it's not like a circular process. And I think it should have something between receiver and sender, which is responding to that encrypted information.
Okay, thank you very much, Ahmed Reza. So just adding to this one, somebody else would like to say something, or? Okay, I see none. So I'm going to proceed with what is actually missing in this model, which is, as Ahmed already said, it should be in a circular way that a receiver responds to the sender. And this is why we have over here feedback. So in order for our communication to be full and efficient, the receiver should send feedback back to the sender, and now we know that our communication is complete. Sometimes it happens that multiple feedback, so feedback after feedback are being sent to one another from sender to receiver and vice versa, which is sometimes efficient or sometimes it can lead to confusion. So in that case, we need to think of which is the problem in our communication, so which is the obstacle that we have in our communication to be efficient. So if we have feedback after feedback all the time, we need to check if there's something interrupting our communication. In that case, this would be noise. So noise is something that interrupts our communication and does not let the communication to be efficient from sender to receiver and with feedback back. So noise can be either a disruption of internet connection if we're talking about telecommunication, or it could be something else that interrupts the way that we are communicate with another person. Or if we are using verbal communication face-to-face with each other, it can be actual noise. So if I'm next to a person and I'm talking to this person, and let's say that a bus goes next to us, drives next to us, or a truck, and there's actual noise next to us, then this is the noise that interrupts our communication. So this can be interpreted in either way, if it's electronical or face-to-face. So now our communication model is complete. Just to wrap this up, I would just like to mention that we should always keep in mind that sender and receiver have different characteristics that we need to take into consideration. So if we are the sender and we want to send an information to a receiver, we need to keep in mind that this receiver has a different level of knowledge, different experience from us, different emotional state, and this person may make assumptions on our message and have different expectations. So we need to keep this in mind, because if we keep this in mind, then we might be able to encrypt our message better, or the content of our message, we can develop it in a different way. So keep in mind that sender and receiver are different people with different experiences and different emotional states. And I'm gonna give the space now to, I'm gonna ask you now to have an activity with each other. And for this one, I would like to ask for 2 volunteers, okay? I would like to ask for 2 volunteers from everybody. I just want to make sure that at least one of the volunteers has a working camera, because we will use it in this activity. Okay, 2 people, please. Can I have 2 volunteers? Please don't make me pick 2 people. I promise it's not a very difficult exercise. It's really, really easy. So please, can I have 2 volunteers? Okay, so 1 person put their thumbs up. I suppose this means that they would like to be volunteer. Yes? Anybody? Okay, since we don't have any response, I'm sorry, but I'll have to pick 2 people. Okay, so Sarah, can you hear me? Sarah cannot hear me. Okay, so we have Jacqueline, the first one, and we need 1 more volunteer, please. Elizabeth, perfect. Okay, so I have my 2 volunteers. Is it possible that at least 1 of you has a working camera? Just to show us something at like a very, just 1 moment. Okay, so Elizabeth has a working camera. What happens is that I'm going to private text Jacqueline with 2 pictures, okay? So what happens is that we'll ask Jacqueline to look at the first picture and orally explain this picture to Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, please take a piece of paper and a pen next to you, and whatever you hear from Jacqueline, you have to draw it on the piece of paper, okay? But you're not able to ask any questions in the end. So please just say yes that you both understood the game. Yes, and Elizabeth? I will explain it 1 more time in the process. Did we understand the game? Elizabeth, I'm waiting for your positive reaction.
She said yes.
She said yes. Okay,
yeah.
I just saw it over here. Thank you so much. Okay, so what happens is that I'm going to share right now 2 pictures with Jacqueline, and in the private group here. So I'm just going to type you privately, and I want you to look at picture number 1. If I find you here, just a moment. Okay, so I want you to look at picture number 1 and explain the picture orally to Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, you should have a piece of paper and a pen next to you, okay? And whatever you hear from Jacqueline, you need to draw it down. Yes? Okay, so Jacqueline, did you?
Okay, for the first, yes, I'm opening the first picture right now.
Okay, Elizabeth, are you ready with a piece of paper and a pencil? Perfect. Okay, so Jacqueline, you can start explaining the picture.
Okay, for the first picture, we have three things. Okay, the first thing for you to draw, it's a shape. It's four-sided. Two sides are equal and the other two sides are equal, but they are not all equal. All four sides are not equal. Just two are equal and the other two are equal. It's a four-sided shape.
Remember, at this point, Elizabeth cannot ask any yes or no questions, so you just proceed, okay?
Oh, okay. All right. And then the next thing, it's just a straight line. I don't know if that's too specific. And then the third thing, it's also a shape. It's more of it's made up of triangles. It's a shape, it's made up of triangles. There are 5 triangles together. It makes one shape, one big shape, made up of 5 triangles. And then for the second picture, we have
let's leave the second picture for now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
So Elizabeth, can you show us what you draw? Maybe with your camera. Could you show to everyone what did you draw? Okay, so we can all see Elizabeth's camera and what she drew. And I'm going to share now my screen and show you the first picture that Jacqueline was looking at, which is this one. You can see it, right? Yes? Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Elizabeth, this was the original picture that Jacqueline was explaining to you. I would like to ask the two girls to tell me how was it in this process? I mean, Elizabeth, did you find it easy to understand what Jacqueline was explaining to you?
I found it easy to understand the first picture. The second picture, well, I knew it was a star, but then I think I really couldn't put it together like right there and then, but it was quite easy to understand.
Okay. Would you prefer to have the ability to ask yes or no questions to Jacqueline? So as you're drawing something, ask a question about this, about what you're drawing, and then proceed?
Yes, I would prefer to ask a yes or no question.
Mm-hmm. It would be easier for you.
It would be easier.
Mm-hmm. So basically, this is a very, very, very simple example of how if we used feedback in the process of communication, it would make our communication more efficient. So at this point, Elizabeth couldn't ask any questions. So it was just one-way communication. But if we had feedback, it would make things much, much more easier. So basically, these are some things about communication and how is communication stated. But now, as we promised in the beginning, we're going to see some things on how to have more efficient communication. And I'm gonna give the floor to Kevin for this one. Sorry, Kevin, you're muted. I'm unmuting you.
Okay, hello everyone. So I'll be talking about communication. To make sure that we communicate in the most effective manner possible, we need to know the 7 C's. So these 7 C's are these things that we can see on the screen. So clarity, coherent, concrete, courteous, commitment, consistency, and completeness. I'll be talking about each one of them. So the first one, when we mean concrete, it's when our message that we want to convey is concrete to our audience. We'll be having a clear picture of what we're trying to tell them. But our message will only be concrete when it has the sustainable data that can back it up. So our argument should be supported by factual material that includes data and figures. That means we'll leave no space for audience to imagine things. This means it's specific instead of generalization. And when we mean coherent, this is the whole point behind our message will be useless unless we are coherent. So it simply means it needs to be well-planned, logical, and sequential manner of communication. There should be a good communication with the main topic, and the flow should be consistent. And the third one is clarity. So on clarity, the purpose of our message should be clear so that our audience doesn't have to struggle to get what we mean. We should be clear about our goal or purpose. This means the sentence should be short, simple, and fluent. It's about the simplicity and organization of our conversation. So when we mean completeness, we shouldn't leave our sentences incomplete. When we want to convey a message, it should be complete, and each message must have a logical conclusion, because people shouldn't be left wondering if there is more to come, or we should make sure that we communicate completely. That includes the need to be informed and take action. So completeness is about making sure that no necessary information is being left out. The next one is courteous. Here, our argument should make the other person feel respected. We should try our best that in our communication, we're honest, respectful, open, and polite. So disrespect can put off the other person. So we should try to avoid that in all means. And when we mean consistency, here, this is using minimum number of words possible when delivering a message. But keep in mind that the other C's must be fulfilled. Concise message is more appealing and comprehensible and will save time both to us and our audience. So we should make it short and concise. The last but not least one is commitment. This simply measures one's dedication and degree to which one communicates surely in an argument. It shows the confidence. A well-committed message will leave a greater impact and increase your morale. So if the communication includes not just the 7 C's of communication that we see here, the listening, nonverbal communication, being clear, concise, confident, being personable, being patient, but also it's overcoming other barriers of communication. This may occur at any stage in communication, as Irene was showing us earlier in the communication model. Then, like the noise will be the barrier. This occurs at any stage, leading to confusion and misunderstanding. So there are other effective communication techniques for us to overcome the barriers and have an effective communication. So the first one will be, we'll have other tips and tricks for our communication. The first one is giving our whole attention. Okay. Yeah, so to give our whole attention, have you ever been in a communication where someone was busy looking at their phone while talking or listening? That's called being absent-minded. So it's a sign of poor communication. Therefore, we must be mindful of how we're communicating, offering the full focus by maintaining eye contact during conversation or in a meeting will contribute greatly to effective communication. And also nodding our head affirmatively while conversing to convey our focus visually. So the second one is to inform and inspire. So more than just passing on the information, we should be careful of explaining and clarifying our thoughts and ideas to have an effective one. Passing the information is just half the equation. So as Irene was showing us in the first slide, so verbal communication is just, it accounts for a very small part of it, and nonverbal is the majority. So we should plan ahead of what we want the audience to remember from our conversation. So do you want them to take part in any action? The most effective communication will make our people take action. So the third one is to practice active listening. So team members who listen well tend to work better. So listening is twice as important as talking, and one being important part of effective communication skills. Listening should not be taken for granted. Do not just sit back, barely awake, and letting the speaker's word wash over us. But the more we listen, the better we receive the information. So here are some ways that we can do that, like making eye contact with the speaker, respond appropriately, no interruptions, and also by examining our body language. The next one is choosing the best method of communication. So here, to communicate well means to understand and be understood. Knowing the right methods of the right communication is as important as having the effective communication skills. So here it can be visual communication like charts, maps, images, graphs, and other things we can use. And verbal communication can be through face-to-face, phone, and other media. Nonverbal can be through body language, eye contact, gestures, and so on. And written communication can be through letters, emails, books, magazines, the internet, and so on. So the fifth tip is do not beat around the bush. So this means clear and concise communication. When we're into a verbal communication or a nonverbal communication, we should not get engaged in long speech to get to our point. So we want to respect everybody's time and brief to the point, and balance brevity with a human touch should be there. So the last one for effective communication skill is being aware of our body. So our body tells a story about us. So for example, crossed or folded arms means defensiveness, hands held behind the body might show confidence, mending clothes, accessories, watch, and so on may show nervousness, and squeezing hand might show self-soothing, and so on. So we should be aware of our body and how people perceive those things. And active listening, this means, as I said earlier, being completely present with what the speaker is trying to impart. And the next one, delivering with confidence. We need to develop a strong delivery by being patient, kind to ourselves, and slowing down. The last one, keeping it positive. So no matter whatever our state of mind we are in, being positive will always save us from getting into a bad conversation. So, and always it's said that positivity leads to effectivity. So in general, we talked about these communication skills. Basically, communication is listening, understanding what we heard, and then responding. So we saw the communication model, how messages transferred, and so on. And we saw the 7 C's. We can use this as a checklist when making our next research paper, project proposal, conference presentation, or lecture, and so on. And the better we communicate, the more credible we'll have with our colleagues, students, readers, reviewers, and general public. So try to remember the tips we talked about for effective communication. And now if you have questions, we're open to that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Heaven. We are here to listen to your questions or read them out loud if you have any, but also we want to say one more time that by the end of this session, we noted down the people that attended, and we're going to share with you a feedback form, so for you to give us your feedback, and also the call for facilitators. So if you would like to facilitate any sessions in the future, you will be able to fill out the form so that we know of your interest. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to say a word. First of all, I really appreciate you, Irene and Heaven, for arranging this meeting, this session, and facilitating this session. I know that always being the first is hard, and you have arranged the first meeting and the first session of internal capacity building sub-teams and communication skill programs. It is normal that the first session, and which is which should be short as possible, even for an hour, cannot be very content rich and full of information. But as if an hour meeting, this session have pointed out and mentioned many important things that each of us should go and search and read and learn about all of them, which are not information and topics which cannot be learned unless we go and read